I'm Scarlett Williams, 28 years old, and I'm standing in the marble foyer of my $3.2 million mansion, holding an invitation to the most exclusive Christmas party this city has ever seen. 3 hours ago, my mother called with news that shattered everything I thought I knew about family. The crystal chandelier above catches the December afternoon light, casting rainbows across walls that suddenly feel more like a fortress than a home. My hands shake slightly as I remember her exact words, each syllable cutting deeper than a blade. The invitation feels heavy now, weighted with purpose and pain. Before we dive into this incredible story of betrayal, revenge, and ultimate triumph, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. If you're ready to hear how one devastating phone call changed everything and led to the most spectacular comeback you've ever seen, smash that like button and hit subscribe because this journey is about to get intense. You won't believe what happens next. The call came at exactly 2:15 on December 23 while I was reviewing contracts for my latest real estate deal. Mom's voice carried that particular coldness I'd grown to recognize over the past 6 months since my divorce from Bradley Morrison was finalized. "Scarlett, your father and I have made a decision about Christmas dinner." The formal tone immediately put me on edge because Helen Williams never spoke to me like a stranger unless something terrible was brewing. "After your divorce from Bradley, you've embarrassed this family enough," she continued without preamble, each word delivered with surgical precision. "We think it's best if you don't attend Christmas dinner this year. Don't even think about showing up." The silence that followed felt like stepping into a vacuum where all sound and reason had been sucked away. I could hear Dad's voice in the background, his deep baritone adding weight to Mom's declaration. "She made her choice, Helen. Now she has to live with the consequences." The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. These were the same parents who had raised me to be independent, who had cheered when I graduated summa cum laude from business school, who had celebrated every promotion and professional achievement throughout my career. Now they were casting me out like some shameful secret that needed to be hidden away. The irony wasn't lost on me that Bradley, the man who had cheated on me with his secretary for 8 months, was apparently still welcome at their table while I was being banished. As the conversation continued, the full scope of what had happened became crystal clear. My older sister Jennifer had been working systematically to poison our parents against me, feeding them a steady diet of lies and manipulations designed to turn them into allies in her personal war against my success. Jennifer, 3 years my senior, had always struggled with jealousy over what she perceived as favoritism from our parents regarding my academic and career achievements. While she had married her high school sweetheart at 22 and had children immediately, I had focused on building my career in commercial real estate. "Jennifer explained everything to us," Mom said, her voice taking on that self-righteous tone she used when she believed herself to be morally superior. "About how you drove Bradley away with your selfishness, how you put money before family, how you never made time for the people who truly mattered." Each accusation felt like another nail being driven into the coffin of our relationship. The woman who had raised me was parroting lies that painted me as some kind of monster who had destroyed my own marriage through ambition and greed. The conversation revealed that this wasn't a spontaneous decision but a carefully orchestrated campaign. Jennifer had been attending family gatherings I'd missed due to work commitments, using those opportunities to reshape the narrative about my character and priorities. She had convinced our parents that my dedication to my career was actually a character flaw, that my financial success was somehow morally questionable, and that Bradley's infidelity was actually my fault for not being a proper wife. When I tried to defend myself, to explain that Bradley had been cheating long before any problems in our marriage became apparent, Mom cut me off with brutal efficiency. "We don't want to hear your excuses, Scarlett. You made your bed, and now you have to lie in it. Maybe this will teach you that family should come before money." The hypocrisy was staggering considering that same success they were now condemning had paid for numerous family vacations, Christmas gifts, and emergency financial help over the years. The final twist of the knife came when I learned that Bradley would actually be attending their Christmas dinner as what Mom called an honorary member of the family. The man who had betrayed our marriage vows was being welcomed while I was being exiled. It became clear that Jennifer had successfully positioned him as the victim in our divorce, someone who deserved sympathy and support for dealing with such a difficult wife. The complete reversal of reality was so extreme it would have been laughable if it weren't so devastating. As I hung up the phone, I sat in the silence of my beautiful home and felt the weight of complete isolation settle over me. 28 years of family history, traditions, and relationships had been severed with a single phone call. The Christmas stocking my grandmother had embroidered with my name, the spot at the dinner table where I'd sat since childhood, the easy familiarity of family gatherings where I belonged without question, all of it was gone. I was truly alone, cut off from everything I had thought was permanent and unshakable in my life. Over the next several hours, as shock gave way to a desperate need for answers, I began making phone calls to extended family members, hoping to find someone who would listen to my side of the story. What I discovered was that Jennifer's campaign of destruction had been far more thorough and systematic than I could have imagined. She hadn't simply poisoned my parents against me. She had methodically worked through every branch of our family tree, planting seeds of doubt and spreading carefully crafted lies designed to make me appear as the villain in every scenario. My first call was to Aunt Martha, my mother's sister, who had always been like a second mother to me growing up. The woman who had taught me to bake chocolate chip cookies and had celebrated every report card with genuine enthusiasm now spoke to me like I was a stranger she couldn't quite recognize. "How could you do this to your parents, Scarlett?" she asked, her voice heavy with disappointment and judgment. "After everything they've done for you, after all the love and support they've given you over the years." When I tried to explain what had actually happened in my marriage, that I had discovered Bradley's affair through credit card statements showing expensive dinners and hotel rooms I knew nothing about, Martha cut me off impatiently. "Jennifer already told us about your accusations and how you tried to blame Bradley for your own failures as a wife. We know how you prioritized your career over your marriage, how you were never home, how you made that poor man feel like he didn't matter." The narrative had been so completely twisted that my discovery of infidelity had somehow been reframed as false accusations born out of guilt over my own shortcomings. The conversation with cousin Diana went even worse. Diana, who had been my closest friend growing up, who had been my maid of honor at my wedding, hung up on me within 30 seconds. "We know what you did," she said coldly before the line went dead. The betrayal of that moment cut deeper than almost anything else because Diana had witnessed firsthand the happiness in my marriage before Bradley's affair destroyed everything. She had been there for girls' weekends and family gatherings where Bradley and I had seemed genuinely content together. Uncle Frank, Dad's brother who had always treated me like the son he never had, delivered perhaps the cruelest blow of all. "You're no longer part of this family," he said with finality that brooked no argument. "We don't associate with people who destroy their marriages and then try to blame everyone else for the consequences." The man who had taught me to change a tire, who had walked me down the aisle at my wedding when Dad was recovering from surgery, had completely written me out of his life based on lies and manipulations he had accepted without question. As I made call after call, the pattern became increasingly clear. Jennifer had attended every family gathering over the past 6 months that I had missed due to work commitments or the emotional turmoil of my divorce proceedings. She had used those opportunities to carefully craft and disseminate a version of events that painted her as the concerned sister trying to help her family understand the truth about my character. She had positioned herself as reluctantly sharing painful information about my behavior, making her seem like a credible and caring source rather than someone with her own agenda. The genius of her strategy lay in how she had woven just enough truth into her lies to make them believable. Yes, I had been working long hours during my marriage, but that was because I was building the career that would eventually allow me to purchase my dream home and achieve financial independence. Yes, Bradley and I had grown apart in the months before our divorce, but that was because I had discovered his infidelity and was struggling to process the betrayal while maintaining my professional obligations. Jennifer had taken these kernels of truth and twisted them into a narrative where I was the selfish career woman who had driven away a loving husband through neglect and ambition. What made the situation even more devastating was learning that Jennifer had been planning this character assassination for much longer than 6 months. According to family members who let details slip during our conversations, she had been planting seeds of doubt about my priorities and character for years. Every missed family gathering, every time I had to leave early for work, every success in my career had been reframed as evidence of my selfishness and inability to value family relationships properly. The isolation campaign had been so effective that even family friends who had known me since childhood were now questioning everything they thought they understood about my character. People who had watched me grow up, who had celebrated my achievements and supported me through challenges, had been convinced that I was someone entirely different from the person they thought they knew. The social fabric of my entire extended network had been systematically rewoven to exclude me, leaving me completely alone in a web of lies and misconceptions that felt impossible to untangle. Perhaps most painful of all was learning that my Christmas stocking, the one my grandmother had lovingly embroidered when I was born, had been removed from my parents' mantelpiece and relegated to a box in the attic. That simple cloth decoration, which had hung in the same spot for 28 years, represented more than just holiday tradition. It was physical proof that I had belonged somewhere, that I had a place in the family that was uniquely mine. Its removal felt like the final erasure of my identity as a daughter, sister, and family member. As I sat in my mansion that evening, surrounded by the silence that had replaced what should have been the warmth of family anticipation, something fundamental shifted inside me. The devastation and betrayal began to crystallize into something far more powerful: determination. If my family wanted to cast me out and treat me like I was worthless, I would show them exactly what they had chosen to lose. I would throw a Christmas celebration so spectacular, so elegantly executed, and so widely attended by important people that everyone in our social circle would see the truth about who I really was and what I had accomplished. I called my assistant Claire at home, something I rarely did on weekends, but this situation demanded immediate action. Claire had been with me for 3 years, had witnessed my professional growth, and understood the quality and attention to detail that defined everything I did. "Claire, I need your help planning an event," I said, my voice steady despite the emotional turmoil of the day. "I want to throw a Christmas party that will be remembered as the social event of the season. Cost is no object, and I need it to happen in less than 24 hours. The guest list became my first strategic weapon in this campaign to reclaim my reputation and demonstrate my true value. I wanted every important person in the city to see who I really was, not the caricature Jennifer had created. We started with my professional network. The partners from the law firm that handled my biggest deals, the architects I collaborated with on major developments, the city council members who had worked with me on zoning issues, and the business leaders who respected my expertise and integrity. These were people who knew me through my work, who had witnessed my professionalism and character firsthand. But I didn't stop there. We expanded the list to include cultural leaders, philanthropists, and social influencers who would ensure that news of this celebration spread throughout every important circle in the city. The mayor, who had personally thanked me for my role in revitalizing the downtown business district, immediately accepted. The symphony conductor, whose fundraising gala I had supported generously, responded within an hour expressing delight at the invitation. Local celebrities, business magazine editors, and prominent community volunteers all confirmed their attendance with enthusiasm that surprised even me. The menu required coordination with the city's most exclusive catering company, one that typically required months of advance notice for events of this caliber. When I explained what I needed, the head chef actually laughed until he realized I was completely serious. Ms. Williams, creating a 5-course gourmet dinner for 60 people with 24 hours notice is virtually impossible, he said, but I could hear the challenge acceptance in his voice. Unless, of course, money is truly no object and you're willing to pay premium rates for a miracle. We settled on a menu that would showcase the finest ingredients available. Imported caviar, aged beef tenderloin, fresh lobster flown in from Maine, and desserts created by a pastry chef whose waiting list was typically 6 months long. Transforming my mansion into a Christmas wonderland required calling in favors from every decorator and event planner I knew. The challenge was enormous, creating an atmosphere that was both elegantly festive and sophisticatedly impressive without appearing desperate or ostentatious. We settled on a winter elegance theme that would showcase the natural beauty of my home while adding touches that would create a magical atmosphere. Professional lighting designers worked through the night to create subtle ambience that would highlight the architectural features of each room while providing warm, welcoming illumination for conversations and dining. The centerpiece would be a 12-foot Christmas tree positioned in the main living area, decorated with handcrafted ornaments and thousands of white lights that would create a stunning focal point visible from multiple rooms. Fresh garlands were woven through the stair railings, around doorframes, and across mantelpieces, filling the house with the scent of pine and creating visual continuity throughout the space. Crystal arrangements and silver accents complemented the existing decor without overwhelming the sophisticated aesthetic I had spent years developing. Entertainment required balancing elegance with engagement, creating an atmosphere where guests would feel welcomed and entertained without the event feeling forced or artificial. A string quartet would provide background music during the cocktail hour and dinner, offering classical holiday pieces and contemporary arrangements that would encourage conversation rather than demand attention. Later in the evening, a jazz trio would take over, creating a more relaxed atmosphere for those who wanted to stay and continue celebrating. The logistics of hosting 60 important people in my home required attention to details I had never considered before. Valet parking was arranged to handle the luxury vehicles that would arrive throughout the evening, ensuring that guests wouldn't have to worry about finding suitable parking in my upscale neighborhood. A professional coat check service would manage winter outerwear with the discretion and efficiency that guests of this caliber expected. Even the restroom facilities required upgrades, with fresh flowers, luxury hand towels, and premium amenities that would maintain the elevated experience throughout every aspect of the evening. Security arrangements became necessary when I realized that several high-profile guests would require discretion and protection. The mayor's security detail needed to coordinate with my event staff, and several business leaders required confidentiality agreements to ensure their attendance wouldn't become public knowledge before they were ready. Photography would be carefully managed, with a professional team documenting the elegant celebration while respecting guests' privacy and comfort levels. As RSVPs poured in throughout the day, each confirmation felt like vindication of my worth and character. These successful, intelligent, discerning people were eager to celebrate with me, to be part of an event I was hosting, to spend their valuable time in my company. The contrast with my family's rejection couldn't have been starker, and with each acceptance, my confidence grew stronger and my resolve deepened. While the physical preparations for my party continued around the clock, I launched a carefully orchestrated social media campaign designed to showcase not just the upcoming celebration, but the successful, accomplished life my family had chosen to reject. This wasn't about bragging or showing off, it was about presenting an authentic picture of who I actually was versus the caricature Jennifer had created to justify their betrayal. The professional photo shoot I arranged for the morning of December 24th captured both the elegance of my mansion and the confident woman I had become despite the challenges I had faced. The photographer, someone I had worked with for business headshots, understood the goal was to present sophistication and success without appearing desperate for validation. We shot in different areas of my home, showcasing the tasteful decor, the stunning architecture, and the evidence of a life well lived and carefully curated. The first post featured me in my home office, surrounded by awards and recognitions for my career in commercial real estate. The caption read, "Grateful for another year of professional growth and personal resilience. Sometimes the greatest gift is learning who truly supports your journey." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Colleagues, clients, and friends from various phases of my life responded with congratulations, admiration, and support that reminded me I wasn't nearly as alone as my family's rejection had made me feel. Subsequent posts strategically highlighted different aspects of my success and character. A photo of the charity donation checks I wrote annually, with a caption about the importance of giving back to community organizations that support families in crisis. Pictures of mentoring sessions I conducted for young women entering the real estate field, demonstrating my commitment to helping others achieve their professional goals. Images from business conferences where I had been invited to speak about leadership and success in competitive industries. Each post was carefully crafted to indirectly counter the lies Jennifer had spread about my character. Where she had painted me as selfish and money-obsessed, I showcased my charitable giving and community involvement. Where she had suggested I was antisocial and family-adverse, I highlighted the mentoring relationships and genuine friendships I had cultivated over the years. Where she had implied I was somehow dishonest or manipulative, I presented evidence of professional recognition and peer respect that spoke to my integrity and expertise. The engagement on these posts grew exponentially as people shared them within their own networks, creating a viral effect that spread far beyond my immediate social circle. Business associates tagged colleagues who should connect with me professionally. Friends shared posts with captions about inspiration and resilience. Even people I barely knew from professional events years ago emerged to offer support and admiration for how I had handled personal challenges while maintaining professional excellence. Perhaps most satisfying were the private messages that began arriving from people who had heard various versions of Jennifer's lies about my character and divorce. Former classmates, neighbors, and family friends reached out to express how the authentic picture I was presenting didn't match the concerning things they had heard through the gossip network. Many admitted they had been confused by the negative stories because they remembered me as someone entirely different from the person those stories described. The momentum building toward party day became unstoppable as my posts generated increasing excitement and curiosity about the celebration I was hosting. People who weren't invited began asking mutual friends about the event, creating an atmosphere of exclusivity and desirability that elevated the party's status beyond just a holiday gathering. Society columnists reached out requesting permission to feature the event in their coverage of the season's most important social occasions. Bradley's current situation became inadvertently highlighted through the social media campaign as mutual friends and acquaintances drew inevitable comparisons between my obvious success and his more modest circumstances since our divorce. While I never mentioned him directly, the contrast between the life I had built and the life he was living spoke volumes about who had actually been the problem in our marriage. His modest apartment, his struggle to maintain the lifestyle he had enjoyed while married to me, and his continued employment in the same position he had held for years created a stark comparison with my continued growth and achievement. The psychological impact on my family became apparent as friends of my parents began commenting on and sharing my posts, making it impossible for Helen and Robert to maintain the fiction Jennifer had created about my character. Their own social circle was seeing evidence that contradicted everything they had been told, creating cognitive dissonance that would eventually force them to question the narrative they had accepted so readily. Jennifer's panic became evident through her own increased social media activity as she attempted to control a narrative that was rapidly spiraling away from her control. Her posts became more frequent and more defensive, trying to present herself as a loving sister concerned about family unity while simultaneously attempting to undermine my obvious success and happiness. The desperation in her approach became apparent to anyone paying attention, creating doubt about her credibility and motivations. As the day of my party approached, the social media campaign had achieved exactly what I intended. Presenting an authentic picture of who I was and what I had accomplished, creating excitement about the celebration I was hosting, and forcing everyone who had heard Jennifer's lies to question whether they had been told the truth about my character and circumstances. The community response to my social media campaign and the growing buzz about my Christmas party created ripple effects that reached my family far faster than I had anticipated. Within hours of my first posts going live, my parents began receiving phone calls from friends and acquaintances who were seeing a very different picture of their daughter than the one they had been led to believe was accurate. The cognitive dissonance this created forced them to confront the possibility that they had made a terrible mistake in believing Jennifer's version of events. Helen's closest friend, Patricia Henderson, called early on the morning of December 24 to express confusion about why she hadn't seen the Williams family at any of Scarlett's recent professional recognition events. "I saw the photos from when she received that award from the Businesswomen's Association," Patricia said, her voice carrying the kind of concern that comes from witnessing something that doesn't make sense. "She looked so elegant and accomplished, but I didn't see you and Robert anywhere in the pictures. I hope everything is all right with your family." The question put Helen in an impossible position. She couldn't explain why they hadn't supported their daughter at professional events without revealing the family rift, but she also couldn't pretend everything was fine when evidence to the contrary was literally visible on social media. Her defensive response, trying to explain that they had been busy with other commitments, sounded hollow even to her own ears and only increased Patricia's confusion about why loving parents would miss celebrating their daughter's achievements. Robert faced similar challenges at his regular coffee meeting with his business associates, men who had known our family for decades and had watched me grow up attending company picnics and holiday parties. When conversation turned to local business success stories, multiple people brought up my recent promotion and the impressive sales figures I had achieved in commercial real estate. "You must be incredibly proud of Scarlett," said James Mitchell, Robert's longtime colleague. "She's really making a name for herself in a competitive field. Is she planning to expand her business into other markets?" The assumption that Robert was intimately familiar with my professional activities and proud of my success created an uncomfortable moment where he realized how little he actually knew about my current achievements. Jennifer's narrative had focused so intensively on my supposed character flaws and personal failures that she had never provided detailed information about my professional success. Robert found himself unable to participate meaningfully in a conversation about his own daughter's career, a realization that created the first crack in his confidence about the family's decision to exclude me. Meanwhile, Jennifer's husband Mark was experiencing his own crisis of conscience as he witnessed the community's reaction to my social media posts and heard conversations that painted me in a completely different light than his wife had presented. Mark had always liked me but had supported Jennifer's campaign against me out of loyalty to his wife and trust in her judgment. However, seeing evidence of my charitable giving, professional recognition, and genuine friendships forced him to question whether Jennifer's concerns about my character were based on reality or something else entirely. The breaking point for Mark came when his own mother, completely unaware of the family drama, called to praise the success and class that I was demonstrating on social media. "That Scarlett Williams is such an inspiration," his mother gushed. "She's achieved so much professionally, and you can tell she's stayed grounded and caring despite her success. Jennifer is so lucky to have a sister like that to look up to." Mark's inability to respond positively to his mother's praise without lying outright forced him to confront the possibility that his wife had misrepresented the situation entirely. The extended family began experiencing similar moments of doubt as community members who weren't aware of the family rift continued to express admiration for my accomplishments and character. Aunt Martha received a call from her book club president asking if I might be willing to speak at their annual fundraiser about women in business leadership. Cousin Diana was approached by a colleague who wanted an introduction to me for potential business collaboration. Uncle Frank heard praise for my community involvement from his church congregation members who served on committees with me. Each of these interactions created uncomfortable moments where family members realized they couldn't explain their current estrangement from me without revealing information that would make them look foolish or cruel. The respected community members who were praising my character and accomplishments weren't people who could be easily dismissed as being deceived or manipulated. These were intelligent, discerning individuals whose opinions carried weight, and their positive assessment of my character directly contradicted everything Jennifer had told the family about my personality and priorities. The news that I was hosting what appeared to be the social event of the Christmas season created additional pressure on my family as people assumed they would naturally be attending such an important celebration hosted by their own daughter and sister. When friends mentioned looking forward to seeing Helen and Robert at my party, the awkward explanations about family scheduling conflicts became increasingly difficult to maintain, especially when those same friends expressed confusion about why loving parents would miss such an obviously important event in their daughter's life. Jennifer's desperation became apparent as she attempted to maintain control of a narrative that was rapidly unraveling around her. She increased her own social media activity, posting frequently about family values and holiday traditions. But the contrast with my obvious success and community respect only made her look petty and jealous. Her attempts to subtly undermine my character through passive-aggressive comments on family posts were noticed by mutual friends and extended family members, who began questioning her motivations and credibility. The most damaging moment for Jennifer's credibility came when she attempted to convince our parents to reach out to me with conditions for attending Christmas dinner, essentially trying to maintain her narrative while offering me a face-saving opportunity to rejoin the family. However, her suggested conditions, including demands that I apologize for my behavior during my divorce and commit to prioritizing family over career going forward, revealed the depth of her misunderstanding about what had actually happened and her continuing need to position herself as the moral authority in family relationships. December 24th arrived with the crisp clarity that only winter can provide, as if the universe itself was conspiring to create perfect conditions for what would become the most magical evening I had ever experienced. By 4 o'clock in the afternoon, my mansion had been transformed into something that looked like it belonged in the pages of an architectural magazine, every detail carefully orchestrated to create an atmosphere of elegant celebration that would welcome guests while showcasing the life I had built through dedication and hard work. The transformation was breathtaking in its sophisticated simplicity. The 12-foot Christmas tree dominated the main living area, its thousands of white lights creating a warm glow that complemented rather than competed with the architectural features of the room. Fresh garlands draped every surface where they belonged, filling the air with the clean scent of pine and creating visual flow between rooms that guided guests naturally through the space. Crystal arrangements caught and reflected light from multiple sources, creating sparkles and rainbows that danced across walls and ceilings as people moved through the rooms. Guest arrivals began promptly at 6 o'clock, and from the first moment, I could tell the celebration was going to exceed even my highest expectations. Mayor Richardson arrived with his wife, both of them immediately expressing delight at the elegant atmosphere and genuine appreciation for being included in what they could tell was going to be a special evening. The symphony conductor brought his partner, a renowned pianist whose presence immediately elevated the cultural significance of the gathering. Business leaders from across the city arrived with spouses and partners who had heard about the party through social media and were curious to meet the woman who had created such excitement in their social circles. My appearance that evening reflected months of careful planning and years of developing personal style that balanced professional competence with feminine elegance. The designer dress I had chosen fit perfectly, its deep emerald color complementing both the holiday theme and my coloring while maintaining the sophisticated aesthetic that defined everything about the evening. My confidence, earned through professional success and personal resilience, radiated in every interaction as I welcomed guests who were genuinely pleased to be celebrating with me. The conversations that developed throughout the evening revealed the depth of respect and admiration I had earned through years of professional excellence and personal integrity. Business partners shared stories about my negotiation skills and deal-closing abilities with guests who hadn't known about my career achievements. Community leaders discussed my involvement in charitable organizations and civic improvement projects with people who had only known me through social media posts. The picture that emerged from these organic conversations was of someone who had built success through talent and hard work while maintaining values and relationships that define genuine character. The dinner service showcased culinary artistry that impressed even guests who were accustomed to the finest dining experiences available in the city. Each course was perfectly prepared and elegantly presented, creating a dining experience that facilitated conversation while providing sensory pleasure that enhanced the overall atmosphere of celebration. The wine pairings, selected by a sommelier who understood the importance of complementing rather than overwhelming both the food and the social dynamic, created perfect accompaniments that encouraged lingering over meals and deepening conversations between courses. Musical entertainment provided the ideal backdrop for an evening that balanced structured activities with organic social interaction. The string quartet during cocktails and dinner created sophisticated ambience that encouraged conversation without demanding attention, while their selection of both classical holiday pieces and contemporary arrangements demonstrated the thought and planning that had gone into every aspect of the evening. The transition to jazz trio later in the evening created a more relaxed atmosphere that invited dancing and the kind of celebratory interaction that makes parties memorable long after they end. The genuine joy and connection that developed throughout the evening proved that authentic celebration creates its own energy that can't be manufactured or forced. Guests who had arrived as professional acquaintances left as friends who wanted to continue building relationships beyond this single event. Business opportunities emerged organically from conversations between people who discovered mutual interests and complementary skills. Social connections formed between guests who found common ground in their appreciation for the kind of evening I had created and the values it represented. Photography throughout the evening captured not just the elegant details of the celebration, but the genuine happiness and connection that defined every interaction. The professional photographers I had hired understood their role was to document authentic moments rather than create artificial poses, resulting in images that would serve as lasting reminders of an evening where everything came together perfectly. The candid shots of guests laughing, conversing, and clearly enjoying themselves provided visual evidence of the success that no amount of planning could guarantee, but that genuine hospitality and careful attention to detail had made possible. The highlight of the evening came during an impromptu toast offered by the mayor, who stood to express appreciation not just for the elegant celebration, but for the kind of community leadership and professional excellence I represented. His words, delivered to a room full of the city's most accomplished and influential people, served as public recognition of the character and achievements that my family had chosen to reject. The applause that followed his remarks felt like vindication for every moment of doubt and pain I had experienced since learning about my family's betrayal. As the evening progressed and guests lingered well past the planned ending time, it became clear that this celebration had achieved something far more significant than simply proving my worth to a community that was already aware of my accomplishments. It had created an experience that reminded everyone present, including myself, of the joy that comes from surrounding yourself with people who appreciate and celebrate your authentic self rather than trying to diminish or control who you choose to become. The morning after my party dawned with the kind of crystalline December clarity that makes everything appear sharp and newly defined, much like the way my social position had been transformed by a single evening of elegant celebration. By 8 o'clock, my phone was buzzing with messages from guests expressing gratitude for an unforgettable evening, requests for connection from people who wanted to continue conversations that had begun at the party, and notifications that photos from the celebration were already appearing across social media platforms with the kind of enthusiastic commentary that creates lasting buzz. The professional photography from the evening had captured not just the elegant details of my mansion's transformation, but the genuine happiness and sophisticated interaction that had defined every moment of the celebration. Images of distinguished guests engaged in animated conversation, the breathtaking elegance of the decor, and the obvious success of every aspect of the evening created visual proof that this had been far more than just a holiday party. It had been a demonstration of taste, accomplishment, and social standing that commanded respect from everyone who saw the documentation. Within hours, the society section editor from the city's most prestigious newspaper called requesting an interview about the event and permission to feature it in their coverage of the season's most significant social occasions. Ms. Williams, she said, her voice carrying the kind of professional excitement that comes from recognizing genuinely newsworthy content, your Christmas celebration has generated more positive conversation in our social circles than any event in recent memory. Our readers would be fascinated to learn more about both the evening itself and the accomplished woman who created such a memorable experience. The Business Journal's lifestyle editor followed with a similar request, but focused on featuring my story as an example of professional success and personal resilience that would inspire their executive readership. The angle they proposed centered on how I had built a thriving career in commercial real estate while maintaining the values and relationships that had enabled me to create such an impressive social celebration. The contrast they wanted to explore was between professional competence and personal warmth, showing how success doesn't require sacrificing authenticity or meaningful connections. Meanwhile, my parents were discovering that the community response to my party was impossible to ignore or explain away. Helen received her first uncomfortable phone call before 9 o'clock from her neighbor Janet, who had seen party coverage on social media and wanted to express how impressed she was by the elegant celebration and distinguished guest list. "You and Robert must be so proud of Scarlett," Janet gushed, completely unaware of the family rift. "The photos from her party are absolutely stunning, and everyone's talking about what a wonderful hostess she is. You raised such an accomplished daughter." Helen's inability to respond with appropriate maternal pride created an awkward moment that ended the conversation prematurely, but Janet's confusion about the Williams family's absence from such an obviously important event in their daughter's life planted seeds of doubt about the explanations Helen had been giving for their estrangement from me. Similar conversations throughout the morning created a pattern of uncomfortable interactions where Helen found herself unable to participate in community celebrations of my success without revealing information that would make her look foolish or cruel. Robert faced even more direct challenges during his regular Saturday morning routine at the country club, where conversation inevitably turned to the previous evening's social events and my party emerged as the dominant topic of discussion. Men who had known our family for decades expressed amazement at the guest list I had assembled, the obvious elegance of the celebration, and the professional and social connections the evening had revealed. "Scarlett really knows how to bring people together," commented his golf partner of 15 years. "The mayor, symphony conductor, all those business leaders, it shows the respect she's earned in this community." The assumption that Robert was intimately familiar with my social and professional network, combined with pride in my accomplishments, created multiple moments where he realized how completely he had been cut off from understanding who his daughter actually was and what she had achieved. Jennifer's campaign had been so focused on character assassination that she had provided virtually no accurate information about my real life, leaving him unable to participate meaningfully in conversations about my obvious success and community standing. Jennifer's humiliation became apparent as mutual friends and extended family members began questioning the negative stories she had spread about my character in light of evidence that directly contradicted her narrative. People who had heard her concerns about my selfishness and antisocial behavior were now seeing documentation of an elegant social celebration that had brought together dozens of distinguished community members who obviously enjoyed my company and respected my accomplishments. The cognitive dissonance this created forced everyone who had heard Jennifer's stories to question either their own judgment about the evidence they were seeing or her credibility as a source of information. The most damaging moment for Jennifer's reputation came when her mother-in-law, completely unaware of the family drama, called to express how impressed she was by the social media coverage of my party and to ask why Jennifer had never mentioned having such an accomplished and socially connected sister. "I had no idea Scarlett was so well regarded in the business community," Mark's mother said innocently. "The guest list from her party reads like a who's who of community leadership. You must learn so much from having a sister with that level of professional success." Jennifer's inability to respond positively without contradicting everything she had told her husband's family about my character created an impossible situation that revealed the depth of her deception. Mark, who was listening to his mother's call, realized that Jennifer had been actively hiding my accomplishments from his family while simultaneously undermining my reputation with our extended family. The calculated nature of her campaign became undeniable, forcing him to confront the possibility that his wife had been lying systematically about someone he had always liked and respected. Extended family members began reaching out privately to express confusion about the disconnect between Jennifer's stories about my character and the obvious evidence of my success and community respect. Cousin Diana sent a tentative text message asking if we could talk, admitting that she was having trouble reconciling the negative things she had heard with the positive community response to my celebration. Aunt Martha called to ask careful questions about my current life, clearly struggling to understand how someone with such obvious character flaws could have earned such widespread respect and admiration. The Christmas dinner at my parents' house became an exercise in awkward pretense as family members gathered to celebrate a holiday that had been overshadowed by questions about their treatment of me. Bradley's presence as an honored guest created additional discomfort as extended family members who had seen coverage of my success began questioning why the man who had cheated on me was being celebrated while I had been excluded. The contrast between his modest circumstances and my obvious prosperity created conversations that highlighted the absurdity of positioning him as the victim in our divorce. The inevitable reckoning arrived at my front door on December 26th at precisely 10:30 in the morning, when the sound of the doorbell interrupted my peaceful post-party reflection over coffee and newspaper coverage of the previous evening's celebration. Through the security system's camera display, I could see my parents standing together on my doorstep, their posture conveying the kind of humbled desperation that comes from realizing you've made a terrible mistake that can't be easily undone. Behind them, parked in my circular driveway, sat Jennifer's car, confirming that this would be a comprehensive family confrontation rather than a simple parental apology. Opening the door required summoning every ounce of emotional control I had developed through years of high-stakes business negotiations, because the sight of my parents looking genuinely remorseful and ashamed created an immediate conflict between my hurt over their betrayal and my deeply ingrained love for the people who had raised me. Helen's eyes were red with tears that appeared genuine, while Robert's usual confident demeanor had been replaced by the uncertainty of a man who had discovered that his judgment about something critically important had been completely wrong. "Scarlett," Helen began, her voice shaking in a way I had never heard before, "we need to talk to you about what happened, about the terrible mistakes we've made." The formal foyer of my mansion, where we stood awkwardly as I decided whether to invite them further into my home, felt like a courtroom where judgment would be rendered on relationships that had defined my entire life until 3 days earlier. The contrast between my obvious success and prosperity and their obvious discomfort created a power dynamic that reversed everything about our previous family interactions. Robert's contribution to their opening statement revealed the depth of their realization about how completely they had been manipulated. "We've spent the last 2 days hearing from everyone in our social circle about your party, about your accomplishments, about the respect you've earned in this community," he said, his voice carrying the weight of genuine remorse. "We realized that everything we thought we knew about your character and your divorce was based on information that doesn't match reality." The invitation into my living room, where we sat in the elegant furniture I had carefully selected to reflect both comfort and success, created an atmosphere where honest conversation could occur despite the emotional minefield we were navigating. Jennifer remained in her car initially, but Helen's gesture toward the window indicated that this confrontation would include everyone who had participated in my exclusion from family gatherings and relationships. Helen's detailed confession revealed the systematic nature of Jennifer's campaign and the way it had exploited their own fears and insecurities about my success and independence. "She convinced us that your career focus meant you didn't value family relationships," Helen admitted, tears flowing freely now. "She said your divorce proved that you prioritized money and status over being a good wife, and we believed her because we were worried that we had somehow failed as parents by raising a daughter who seemed so different from traditional family values." The revelation that their criticism of my character had been rooted in their own insecurity about whether they had raised me correctly added another layer of complexity to the betrayal. They hadn't just chosen to believe lies about my character, they had been susceptible to those lies because Jennifer had skillfully exploited their own doubts about whether my independence and success meant they had somehow failed in their parental responsibilities. Robert's admission about his role in the family's decision revealed how gender expectations had influenced their judgment about my priorities and behavior. "We kept comparing you to Jennifer, who followed what we thought was the right path by marrying young and having children immediately," he explained, his discomfort with this confession obvious in his reluctance to make eye contact. "When your marriage failed, it seemed to confirm that choosing career over family leads to unhappiness, and we let that belief make us blind to what was actually happening in your life." The moment Jennifer finally entered my home marked the beginning of the most emotionally intense portion of our confrontation, because her presence forced us to address not just the lies she had told, but the motivations behind her systematic campaign to destroy my relationships with our family. Jennifer's appearance shocked me, because the confident, manipulative sister who had orchestrated my exile had been replaced by someone who looked genuinely broken and desperate for forgiveness she wasn't sure she deserved. Jennifer's confession, delivered through tears that seemed to come from genuine remorse rather than self-pity, revealed the depth of jealousy and insecurity that had motivated her behavior. "I've been jealous of you since we were children," she said, her voice barely audible as she struggled to articulate feelings she had apparently never acknowledged even to herself. "You were always the smart one, the accomplished one, the one Mom and Dad bragged about to their friends. I felt like I could never measure up to your achievements, so I decided to try to bring you down instead of building myself up." The detailed explanation of how she had planned and executed her campaign revealed a level of calculation that was both impressive and terrifying in its thoroughness. She had kept notes about my work commitments and personal challenges, using information I had shared during family gatherings to craft stories that contained just enough truth to be believable while completely distorting the context and my motivations. She had timed her revelations to coincide with moments when my parents were already feeling disconnected from my life due to my work schedule or the emotional turmoil of my divorce. Perhaps most damaging was learning that Jennifer had actively prevented our parents from reaching out to support me during my divorce, intercepting phone calls and redirecting conversations whenever they expressed concern about my well-being. She had convinced them that my requests for space and time to process Bradley's betrayal were actually evidence that I didn't value their support, when in reality I had been desperately hoping they would reach out despite my inability to ask for help directly. Bradley's role in supporting Jennifer's narrative became clear as Jennifer explained how she had maintained contact with my ex-husband throughout our divorce proceedings, gathering information about my emotional state and legal strategy that she then used to support her claims about my character. Bradley had apparently been eager to position himself as the victim in our divorce, and Jennifer's willingness to validate his version of events had created a mutually beneficial relationship that had helped both of them avoid taking responsibility for their respective roles in the destruction of my marriage and family relationships. The confrontation reached its emotional climax when Jennifer revealed that she had been planning this character assassination campaign for years, waiting for an opportunity when I would be vulnerable enough for her lies to be believable. My divorce had provided the perfect opening because it created a situation where my behavior could be questioned and my priorities examined, allowing her to present carefully crafted interpretations of my actions that painted me as selfish and family adverse. The complexity of forgiveness in this situation became apparent as I realized that understanding Jennifer's motivations didn't automatically erase the damage she had caused or restore trust in relationships that had been systematically undermined through calculated deception. The choice between holding on to justified anger and beginning a healing process that might eventually restore family relationships represented one of the most difficult decisions I had ever faced, made more complicated by the knowledge that my response would set the tone for how our family functioned going forward. 3 months after that devastating December 26th confrontation, as I sit in my home office on a crisp March morning reviewing contracts for what promises to be the most successful quarter of my career, I can honestly say that the forced separation from my family, painful as it was, ultimately became the catalyst for creating a life more authentic and fulfilling than anything I could have imagined while trapped in relationships built on manipulation and conditional acceptance. The process of rebuilding family relationships has been gradual and carefully managed, with clear boundaries and expectations that protect the emotional well-being I fought so hard to establish. My parents have demonstrated their commitment to genuine change through consistent actions rather than empty promises, attending every professional event I've invited them to, supporting my career achievements publicly, and most importantly, refusing to tolerate any negative commentary about my character or choices from Jennifer or anyone else in our extended family. Jennifer's journey toward redemption has been more complex and remains ongoing, involving professional therapy to address the deep-seated insecurities and jealousy patterns that motivated her destructive behavior. The sister who systematically tried to destroy my reputation has been replaced by someone genuinely working to understand and change the thought patterns that made such cruelty possible. Our relationship may never return to the closeness we shared as children, but we've established a foundation of honesty and respect that allows for family gatherings without the undercurrent of competition and resentment that previously poisoned our interactions. The Christmas party that began as revenge has evolved into an annual tradition, but one focused on community building and charitable giving rather than proving my worth to people who should have recognized it already. This year's celebration will benefit the local women's shelter, providing funding for job training programs that help survivors of domestic violence achieve financial independence. The guest list has expanded to include many of the same distinguished community members who attended that first party, but the purpose has shifted from demonstrating my success to using that success for meaningful community impact. Professionally, the visibility and connections generated by that December evening have led to opportunities one could never have anticipated. The regional director position I accepted in February represents not just career advancement, but recognition of leadership abilities that extend beyond technical competence to include the kind of relationship building and community engagement skills that make businesses genuinely successful rather than merely profitable. The romantic relationship that has developed with Marcus Henderson, a fellow commercial real estate executive whose company handles development projects throughout the region, represents the kind of partnership I never thought possible during my marriage to Bradley. Marcus appreciates and celebrates my ambition rather than viewing it as competition or threat, creating space for both of us to pursue professional excellence while building a personal connection based on mutual respect and shared values. Perhaps most importantly, the experience taught me that family relationships, like all relationships, must be based on genuine love and support rather than obligation and tradition. The people who remained loyal during my darkest moments, who celebrated my successes without jealousy, and who offered support without conditions have proven themselves worthy of the investment emotional intimacy requires. Those who chose manipulation and betrayal over honesty and acceptance revealed character flaws that no amount of shared history could overcome. The extended family members who reached out during the aftermath of my party to apologize for their participation in my exile have been welcomed back into my life based on their willingness to acknowledge their mistakes and demonstrate genuine change in their behavior. Cousin Diana has become one of my closest confidants, our relationship stronger now than it ever was before because it's built on adult understanding rather than childhood familiarity. Uncle Frank's consistent efforts to make amends through support of my professional activities and public acknowledgement of my character have slowly rebuilt the trust his initial rejection damaged. Bradley's attempts at reconciliation, which began shortly after news of my professional advancement became public knowledge, have been politely but firmly rejected. The man who cheated on our marriage and then supported Jennifer's campaign against my character has forfeited any claim to consideration or second chances. His regret seems motivated more by awareness of what he lost financially and socially than by genuine understanding of the emotional damage his betrayal caused. The lessons learned through this experience extend far beyond family dynamics to encompass fundamental truths about self-worth, authentic success, and the courage required to live according to your own values rather than other people's expectations. Success that requires dimming your own light to make others comfortable isn't worth achieving, and relationships that demand you become smaller or less authentic to maintain them aren't worth preserving. As I prepare for this year's Christmas celebration, surrounded by friends and family members who genuinely love and support the person I've chosen to become, I'm grateful for the painful experience that forced me to examine which relationships in my life were genuine and which were based on control and manipulation. The woman who was devastated by family rejection 3 months ago has been replaced by someone who understands that belonging with people who celebrate your authentic self is infinitely more valuable than acceptance from those who require you to pretend to be someone else. The annual tradition I'm establishing will ensure that every December 24th, I remember not just the pain of betrayal and rejection, but the strength and resilience that carried me through the darkness toward a life filled with genuine love, mutual respect, and the kind of success that enhances rather than diminishes the people around me. Looking back at that devastating phone call from my mother, I can now see it as the moment when my real life began, freed from the constraints of relationships that required me to be less than my authentic self in order to maintain the comfort and security of people who were never truly committed to my happiness and success in the first place. I want to hear from all of you about your own experiences with family drama and choosing your authentic self over others' expectations. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who didn't support your success? How did you handle situations where people you loved tried to make you smaller to make themselves feel better? Drop your stories in the comments below because your experiences might help someone else who's struggling with similar challenges. If this story resonated with you and reminded you that your worth isn't determined by other people's approval, please hit that like button and share this video with anyone who needs to hear this message. Don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell because I share stories every week about finding strength through adversity and building the life you deserve. Thank you so much for listening to my journey, and I hope your own story includes the courage to choose authenticity over acceptance and genuine love over conditional approval. Wishing you all the strength to surround yourself with people who celebrate rather than diminish your light.